Hi, John Maxwell here. On July 4th, my father passed away. And what I'm going to do is share with you a tribute to my dad. And it's the lessons that he taught me. He lived for 98 years and 8 months. Another lesson my dad taught me, oh my, there's so many good lessons. As I look at my list, and honestly, as I've started the list, I've thought of a couple more, but as you know, again, I said this, I know at least in tribute to my father, lesson 1, maybe in the other ones also. These are lessons I wrote down on the last day I was with my dad when he was alive. And he couldn't respond to me at all, so I sat at his bedside with my iPhone. And I literally began to write down lessons I learned from Dad. And when I would learn them, I would just speak to him. I'd say, Dad, here's another lesson you taught me. And I would talk to him about that lesson. And we had the most beautiful, intimate father-son time together. So that's where all these lessons, come from. In fact, I'm reading off of a list here, but really, when I look at this thing, if I just take you over here for just a second, Dad, July 1, 2000. Thanks, Dad, I learned from you. These are all my lessons right here. They're just right here on my iPhone. And of course, I'll keep them there and go over them like I'm teaching you that. Now, by the way, I make my dad sound like a saint, but I tell you all the good lessons. But he also taught me some bad lessons too. One of the things I learned from my dad was to love ice cream. Oh my gosh. My dad loved ice cream. I love ice cream. We've had many great conversations where he took a quart and I took a quart, and we talked and ate ice cream. So he wasn't a total saint. He also, I learned impatience from my dad. Oh my goodness. Patience was, I didn't teach you anything about patience here in this lesson. My father, I'll tell you how impatient my dad was. This is fun. I'll just tell you this for a moment. My sister Trish, this was when he was probably 92. Took him in his car to a place to, like a Jiffy Lube place to get his car taken care of. And so they were sitting down, and after about 30 minutes, he looked at Trish. He said, aren't they done yet? And she said, well, they'll be done pretty soon. And about 40 minutes in, he said, Trish, they ought to be done by now. And she said, well, let me go check. She went and checked, and she came back and said, they said it's going to be a few more minutes. And now, Dad, he's up. He's pacing the floor. He's looking at his watch. He said, as if he had someplace to go. And finally, about 50 minutes in, he looked at her and said, okay, I got an idea. She said, what, Dad? He said, let's go buy a car. Let's go buy a car. She said, what do you mean? He said, I can buy a car quicker than I can have this car have a lube job. He said, and she said, Dad, you can't go buy a car. We got to wait on this car. Now, my father, he's ready to go buy a car. Let's just go buy a car. If I have to wait this long, I might as well go buy me a new car. Then I won't need the lube job on it. So he wasn't a saint. I learned to also speed with my dad. I mean, I'm sorry, but he was his impatience. He taught me to even cut in line a few times. So he wasn't a saint, but the lessons I'm giving you were life-changing lessons to me. So let me just give you, I've just got a couple more, and then I'll finish this thing up. My father, this was huge. My dad taught me to do my best, always. And if you're writing it down, just take the word always and put it in capital letters. My father felt that if it was worth doing, it was worth doing it right. And he would often say, John, if you don't do your best, 2 things happen. 1, you have to go back and do it, or 2, you didn't go back and do it. And you shortchanged yourself, and you shortchanged the people that you were trying to help. He said, don't go that way. He said, why would you go do something twice when you can do it best once? And so and again, being a person of faith, my father would believe that excellence began because that brought glory to God. If you travel, especially in Europe, you look at some of the great old buildings, they'll have the expression, year it was built, and then for the glory of God, for the glory of God. And they basically try to live their life and build their buildings as a masterpiece of excellence to honor their Creator. And my father just believed that with all of his heart. And so therefore, whenever we did something, we knew that we didn't do it half-heartedly. We didn't tiptoe through the tulips. We had to be all in, dive in, and do our very best. And that is something that I'm so appreciative of in my life today. I can still remember when I was a young leader after I, went into my first church, and I realized that I was naturally a kind of a connecting, charismatic kind of communicator. And I realized that I was good at it. In fact, I was speaking in a farming community with only 30 people, and to be honest with you, those farmers were just glad to have a little time that they weren't doing chores. And so they loved me. And I realized very quickly that I could get up and I could just maybe study for 30 minutes and I could preach a message and they would all be happy. And so I asked myself, well, what am I going to do? Am I just going to do that and kind of wing it and get passing grades? Or am I going to really work for it? And I went into a few months of, do I wing it or do I work for it? And I'm so glad I went back to my father and I realized his teaching stayed with me. I can't wing it. I've got to do my best. So I literally started writing every sermon out so that I would be clear in my thinking and so that I wouldn't repeat myself. And I started that habit. For 25 years, I wrote out every sermon, word for word. It was an incredible discipline. And it also helped me to realize I've got to give best effort and I've got to get best return for this. My father really developed that excellence line. And he always said to me, son, he said, remember this, you set your own bar of excellence. Don't let someone else set it for you. In fact, he said, if someone else sets the bar of excellence for you and their excellence is higher than yours, then you've set the wrong bar. He said, you should have such a high expectation of what you do that no one else has that high expectation. So you not only want to meet expectations, you want to exceed expectations. I've done teaching on exceeding expectations. You see, only 15% of the people even meet expectations. Only 5% exceed them. And my dad understood that if you exceed expectations, if you do your best always, you'll set yourself apart from the rest of the crowd. And that's absolutely life-changing. It's huge. Wow. Dad, I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful for you, for all that I learned from you.